When Burkina Faso's president of the transition, Ibrahim Traoré, arrives at an event meant to celebrate his own national achievements, he's shockingly blocked at the entrance by a confused security guard. What could have been a scandal turns into a legendary moment that leaves the entire crowd in tears and stuns social media. What he does next will remind the world what true leadership looks like. It was a hot Tuesday afternoon in Ouagadougou. The streets buzzed with excitement. Flags of Burkina Faso danced in the wind. Children wore t-shirts proclaiming, "Our hero, Ibrahim Traoré." This was no ordinary day. It was a day of honor, an event to celebrate President Traoré's efforts in reclaiming peace, feeding the poor and restoring dignity to the people. Thousands gathered at the National Civic Arena. But as a black, unmarked Toyota pulled up to the VIP entrance, a lone security officer raised his hand. He stepped forward firm. "Excuse me, sir. I can't let you in without a badge." Inside the car, President Ibrahim Traoré blinked. No escort, no loud sirens. He had come quietly as he always did. "I am Ibrahim Traoré," he said gently. The guard furrowed his brows and laughed nervously. "No, sir, the president doesn't come like this." People nearby began watching. Phone cameras pointed. The president didn't get angry. He didn't call for backup. He stood still. And then he did something so unexpected it shook the entire crowd and the internet within minutes. Instead of showing his ID or forcing his way through, President Traoré smiled. Then, slowly, he stepped away from the entrance and began walking, yes, walking, down the side of the building, past confused vendors, surprised guards, and murmuring journalists whispering, "Is that really him?" His aides tried to rush in to explain, but he stopped them with a simple hand gesture. "No," he said softly. "Let the people see me this way." A barefoot child ran up, holding a piece of roasted corn. "President," he shouted, "why are you outside?" Traoré bent down to eye level and replied, "Because today is not about me. It's about all of us." A grandmother wept from behind a fence. As Traoré kept walking around the back of the arena, more people followed him. No security, no stage, just the man and the people. He reached a small side gate. The guards there recognized him instantly and jumped to attention, but Traoré raised a finger and said, "Please don't open the gate. I want to enter like everyone else." Inside the packed arena, organizers looked nervous. The president was late, very late. His special seat at the front, handmade by local artists, remained empty. A spotlight beamed down on it. People whispered, "Where is he?" Outside, Traoré stood in line with everyday citizens. No one was asked to move. He waited quietly beside a farmer and two schoolboys. The farmer, unaware, asked him, "You're here for the event?" Traoré nodded. "Yes, I'm hoping to learn something." The man chuckled. "Me too. They say the president is a good man." Traoré smiled again. When he finally entered the arena, not through the VIP gate but the public entrance, a gasp rippled through the crowd. Children stopped eating. Old women placed hands on their hearts. Some began to cry. The music halted. All eyes turned. He had no guards, no fanfare, only a dust-stained white shirt and sandals. A silence fell over the arena, so deep it felt like the earth itself paused to watch. Then the crowd slowly stood one by one. No claps, just reverence. An old man shouted, "He walks with us because he is one of us." The arena erupted in emotion, but the most unforgettable moment was still to come. Back at the VIP gate, the young security officer stood frozen. Someone had whispered in his ear, "That was the president." His eyes widened, his mouth fell open. He looked down at the entrance list in his hand, no picture, no direct instruction. He thought he was just doing his job. His chest tightened, his knees felt weak. People began filming him. Some mocked, others laughed, but suddenly, a firm hand touched his shoulder. He turned and it was Traoré. Somehow the president had circled back. "No one should blame you," Traoré said softly. "You did what was right. You followed the rules. Burkina Faso needs men like you." The guard's lips trembled. Traoré embraced him genuinely in public with cameras watching. That one hug broke the internet. Within hours, hashtags trended, hashtag humble president, hashtag Ouagadougou, hashtag guard of honor. But inside the arena, something even more stunning was happening. Traoré was about to step on stage, and he wasn't bringing notes. He was bringing something else, something raw, heavy, and heartbreaking. When Ibrahim Traoré walked onto the stage, he carried nothing. No speeches, no folders, just a single photograph folded in his palm. The cheering died down. A deep silence took over the arena. He looked at the crowd, thousands of faces, young, old, mothers holding babies, students, soldiers, farmers. Then he held up the photograph. It was old, faded, a little boy in torn sandals standing in front of a broken mud house. This, Traoré said, was me. Gasps echoed. He paused, letting the silence wrap around every heart. I wasn't born in a palace. I didn't grow up with power. That day, he pointed to the photo, I ate once and drank from a cracked plastic bottle. His voice broke. But someone believed in me, my mother, my teachers, my neighbors. Burkinafaso believed in me. A woman in the audience began to sob, then another and another. No amount of titles, he continued, will ever separate me from where I came from. I'm not your leader because I am above you. I am your leader because I walk with you. The entire arena stood, not to cheer but to cry. Behind the stage, a chair built especially for the president, carved from rare wood, polished for weeks, embroidered with gold thread, was meant to honor Traoré, to show the nation's love. But as applause grew louder, the chair remained empty. Traoré stood before it, looked at it, and shook his head. Slowly, he walked past it and sat on the simple wooden bench where the cleaning crew usually sat. The audience was stunned. What is he doing? Someone whispered. A little girl in the front row asked her mother, why won't he sit in his chair? Her mother, wiping her eyes, said, because his heart is bigger than that chair. Traoré looked at the people around him, ushers, stage workers, volunteers. He nodded at each one. I'm not here to be served, he said softly. I'm here to serve. The moment was caught on camera. The clip spread like wildfire, BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, Facebook, TikTok. Everyone asked the same question. Is this the most humble president in the world? But what was coming next would shake the soul of the nation and the heart of the world. As Traoré sat quietly on the workers' bench, a whisper rose from the crowd. Did you see what he did? I've never seen a president sit there. But then came a voice, soft and trembling, from the second row. It belonged to an elderly woman in her 70s, Awa Senu, a retired midwife from Bobo Dioulasso. She stood slowly, using a wooden cane, and asked the organizers if she could speak. At first they hesitated, but Traoré raised his hand. Let her. A microphone was handed to her. The arena fell silent again. She looked directly at the president. You don't know me, she said, her voice breaking. But years ago, when rebels burned my clinic and my husband was killed, you came. Traoré's eyes widened. You weren't a president then, just a soldier. But you carried my daughter 5 miles to safety. People gasped. Cameras zoomed in. Traoré looked stunned. And today, she continued, you showed the world again. You don't need a title to be great. You just need a heart. The crowd erupted in sobs. But Awa wasn't done. She had something in her bag, and it would break everyone. Slowly, she reached into her worn handbag and pulled out a small white cloth, carefully wrapped in a plastic sleeve. It looked old, faded, but in the bright lights of the arena, a brown-red stain across the middle became clear. She held it up with trembling hands. This, she said, was the cloth you wrapped my daughter's foot in when she was bleeding. Traoré stood slowly, his face had gone pale. I never threw it away, Awa continued, crying. Not because it was clean, but because it saved my daughter's life. The crowd was silent. Even the camera crew dropped their equipment and wiped their eyes. Awa walked forward. The cloth looked small, but the moment felt massive. She gently placed it in the president's hands. He knelt right there in front of her and whispered something only the cameras caught. I remember that day. I just didn't know it mattered this much. Awa embraced him like a mother hugging her son. In that moment there was no politics, no fame, no ceremony, just humanity. But the emotional wave wasn't over yet. Because outside the arena, something huge was about to happen. Outside the event venue, traffic came to a stop, not because of an accident, but because thousands of people, men, women, even children, were walking toward the arena in silence. No one told them to come. They just heard. They heard about the bench, the speech, the cloth. It spread like wildfire on phones, radios, and loudspeakers from nearby markets. They came, some with candles, some with flowers, some with nothing but their bare feet. Inside, Traoré stepped out for air. What he saw made him stop breathing for a second. The street was full, but no one shouted. They simply stood, hands over hearts, as if saying thank you without words. A little boy, maybe 8 years old, ran forward. He wasn't holding a flag or a sign. He was holding his school report card. "I want to give this to you, President," he said, "because you're the reason I'm still in school." Traoré bent down, took it gently, and hugged the boy. The cameras caught everything. Within an hour, global media picked it up. Burkina Faso's president turns event into human moment. This is what leadership looks like. But what the president was about to do next, no one could have imagined. Inside the arena, just as the crowd began settling from their tears, a rustle echoed from the back. It was the young security guard, the one who had mistakenly stopped Ibrahim Traoré at the gate. He looked scared, eyes red, hands shaking. 2 other guards tried to stop him, but Traoré noticed and waved them off. The young man walked slowly down the aisle, past ministers, generals, and elders, then fell to his knees before the president. "I didn't know. I didn't recognize you," he cried. "I was only trying to do my job." Traoré didn't say anything. The room held its breath. Then the president walked up, knelt beside the guard, and gently helped him stand. "You were doing exactly what this country needs," he said softly. "You followed your duty even when you were unsure." The guard broke down, crying in his arms. And in that moment something strange happened. All the soldiers around the arena began clapping, not for Traoré alone, but for the idea that no man, no title, is above accountability. The internet exploded again. But what no one knew was that Traoré had one last personal reason for attending this event, one he hadn't revealed. As the program resumed, organizers invited Ibrahim Traoré to the stage. But as he walked up, he politely declined the golden chair reserved just for him. Instead, he walked to the very last row where no cameras reached and pulled out a chair beside a young disabled girl. Her name was Mariam. She had been invited quietly with her mother because she had written a letter months earlier that went viral. She had asked, "President Traoré, will you ever sit next to someone like me?" She never got a reply. But now, as the president sat beside her, gently holding her hand, the answer was clear. The hall became quiet again. Tears returned. Then something even more powerful happened. Traoré asked for the microphone and with all eyes on him said, "This chair was never meant to be mine alone. It belongs to every Burkinabe child who dreams, every mother who struggles, every father who falls but stands again. That's who built this country. I'm just sitting among them today." Even the journalists lowered their cameras. The moment wasn't for headlines, it was for healing. But as powerful as that was, nothing would compare to what happened the next morning. Before sunrise, with no press, no entourage, and just 2 plain vehicles, Ibrahim Traoré did something unexpected. He visited a quiet cemetery on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. Only a few old grave markers stood there, many without names. He walked to one in particular, simple, unpainted, and knelt. This wasn't just any grave. It was his best friend's, a young soldier named Adama Coulibaly, who had died saving Traoré during a rebel ambush years ago. Traoré had never spoken publicly about him. But this morning, alone with a small flower in hand, he whispered, "Everything I do to honor your sacrifice." He sat there for 30 minutes, silent, remembering. Then a child from the nearby village recognized him. Soon dozens came, barefoot, just watching from behind trees. He turned, smiled at them, and waved them over. And right there in the dust, he started drawing in the sand with the children. A president, in silence, drawing stars and flags with kids. That photo would become the image of the year. But no one knew he was preparing for one final speech that would shake the entire world. By afternoon, news had spread like wildfire. The president knelt in a cemetery, sat with a disabled girl, hugged a security guard. Social media couldn't stop talking. Every post ended the same: who leads like this anymore? While the nation was still catching its breath, Traoré made a quiet phone call to the event organizers. He had one final request: not to speak from the podium, not to take the closing anthem. He asked to walk through the crowd, unguarded, and let people tell their stories for 1 hour. No speeches, he said. Let the real heroes speak. The team was confused. Was this wise? Was this safe? But they agreed. Just before sunset, Traoré walked down the center aisle. No jacket, no mic, just a chair in his hand. He placed it in the middle of the crowd and sat, then pointed to the first man he saw, a retired farmer, and whispered, "Tell us what you survived." The old man stood, hands trembling, and began to speak. One by one, others rose: women, widows, veterans, street boys, each with a story. Each left the crowd in tears. But it was the last story that brought Traoré to his knees. A small voice rose from the far right. It belonged to a girl no older than 9. She was thin, barefoot, and holding a folded piece of cloth in her hand. Everyone turned as she walked slowly toward President Traoré. When she stood before him, she unfolded the cloth. Inside was a photo, dusty and torn, showing her father, a fallen soldier, standing beside Traoré years ago during a mission in the north. "My papa said you saved him once," she whispered, "but he didn't make it home the second time." The crowd fell silent. Tears fell quietly. Traoré stared at the photo, frozen. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn prayer bead, the same one her father used to carry. "I've kept this since the day he died in my arms," he said gently. "I never forgot." With both hands he gave it back to the little girl. She held it to her chest and collapsed in tears. No words were needed. That image went viral in minutes. But what the cameras didn't catch was this: Ibrahim Traoré cried too. Not as a president, but as a brother, a soldier, and a man who remembered everything. After the emotional stories, night began to fall. Most thought the day was over. But Traoré stood once more and made an unexpected announcement: "Tomorrow morning I will walk. No cars, no soldiers, just me and anyone who wants to walk with me across the city." The organizers tried to advise against it. It was too risky, too disorganized. But Traoré simply said, "Let the people lead. I will follow." And so, the next morning as the sun rose over Ouagadougou, the streets filled with thousands, not for protest, not for politics, but to walk with a man who had proven his heart. Mothers held children, old men brought flags, farmers, teachers, nurses, even the security guard from day one, all came. It became known as the Silent March of the People. They walked through markets, past schools, hospitals, and cemeteries. Along the way, Traoré shook every hand he could. When they reached the final stop, he turned and said, "You don't need to raise your voices to be heard. Walk in truth and the world will follow." But what he didn't know was that someone from outside the country had been secretly watching the entire week unfold, and they were preparing to speak next. Unknown to everyone in Burkina Faso, a young journalist from Senegal, Mariam Diouf, had arrived days earlier for the event. She was sent by an African news outlet to cover the ceremony. But what she witnessed was beyond headlines. She had filmed everything: the moment Traoré was blocked at the gate, his silent kindness to the confused guard, his time with the orphan girl, the walk through the city, every gesture, every tear. She had uploaded clips daily to her private channel. And now, after the silent march, her latest post read, "I came to report on a leader. I found a father to the broken, a listener to the poor, and a heart the world forgot existed." The video went viral overnight. Millions of Africans shared it. Then came a surprise, an invitation from the African Union. They wanted Traoré to speak, not about economics or politics, but on how to lead with heart. Traoré simply replied, "Let me first finish walking with my people." Because even with the world watching, his eyes were still on home. The final day of the event arrived. Everyone expected a grand presidential speech. Flags were raised. The stage was decorated. Global media had arrived. But when Ibrahim Traoré finally stood on stage, he said nothing. Instead, he called up 5 ordinary citizens, The widow, the teacher, the street boy, the disabled girl, and the farmer from earlier in the week. One by one they spoke for him and the world watched in awe. No slogans, no applause lines, just truth, pain, hope, and honor. When it was his turn to speak, he looked into the crowd and said, "This country has enough of my voice. It's time we listen to yours. I am not here to be celebrated. I'm here to serve." Then he stepped back. The entire place went silent. Then suddenly applause broke out, loud, endless, emotional. People cried openly. Many dropped their phones just to clap harder. That moment became known online as the speech that changed nothing and everything. But the biggest surprise of the week was still to come. Right after that applause, Traoré vanished from the stage. He didn't stay for interviews or take photos with dignitaries. He simply walked away alone into the crowd. People called out, but he just waved, smiling. Later, a young boy from the village said he saw him helping an old woman push a wheelbarrow near the back gate. That image, a president in the dust pushing a wheelbarrow, was captured by a teenager on a blurry phone camera. It became the most shared photo in West Africa that year. Under it, someone wrote, "Leadership is not a crown. It's a cloth you use to wipe the tears of your people." And that is how the week ended. No scandals, no drama, just one quiet man who showed that the loudest kind of power is silent compassion. From that day on, even those who once doubted him began to say, "That's my president." To my amazing viewers, if this story touched your heart, if it made you cry, if it reminded you what real leadership can look like, please like this video and subscribe to this channel for more stories about Ibrahim Traoré.